What's up, guys? Aaron BTV here, back with another video. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about the whole waiver process in the United States Army. What kind of waivers are there? How do you get a waiver? What to do if you get a waiver? You know, allergies, asthma. We talk about all that stuff. And I have a very special guest with us today, TEAM SWARTZ. I will link his channel down in the description below. He is a drill sergeant. But anyways, it's a very good video. We talk about a lot of stuff that you guys may find important. So continue to watch it. And yeah, let's go.
Now, one thing that you talked about, before was waivers, and I just want to move into, so basically what types of waivers are there in the Army enlistment process? And well, first of all, what is a waiver, when it comes to the whole enlistment process? Why would somebody need one? And basically, what are the different types of waivers? But we could start with what is a waiver in terms of enlistment.
So when you're going through the enlistment process, your recruiter is going to ask you a series of questions, right? Because we want to make sure that you are medically, mentally, morally, and ethically sound, good to go, good values, all that good stuff. So if you have a colorful background with law violations or maybe some financial issues in the past, or maybe you have some medical issues. So a waiver means that you are not eligible for enlistment, but depending on the circumstances and the reasons for you not qualifying for service, we can possibly request a waiver. So essentially what that means is we are requesting permission based on your disqualification to overlook it or assume that risk of bringing you in. So that risk versus reward type of assessment, right? So depending on the type of waiver, which leads me into the types of waivers. So there are medical waivers, moral waivers for law violations, administrative waivers for prior service folks who previously served in the military.
So pretty much you listed all the different types of waivers. So which ones are more acceptable that you've seen as in your experience as a recruiter, and which ones are more likely to get denied?
Well, if you have more than 2 drug violations, there's no waivers authorized, right? So if you have, let's say, a major misconduct, which would be a possession of marijuana charge, right? Anything that's considered a controlled substance, no waivers authorized. So if you have a marijuana possession charge, including a minor not traffic for something like jaywalking, or let's say, disorderly conduct, something minor like that, then you're going to require a moral waiver, right? And a lot of times, depending on the law violation, at minimum, we're going to request a what we call a suitability review. So it's not necessarily a disqualification that's going to prevent you from ultimately enlisting, but we're sending, it's kind of like a pre-approval. So we send your record and everything to the waiver processing department to assess your disqualification, and then they make that determination if you're good to go to enlist with no waiver, or you're not qualified at all, period. Or they can say, yes, they are disqualified, but we do recommend a waiver, submit a waiver. Once we submit the waiver, then they ultimately approve it 9 out of 10 times, unless their feelings about the evidence or their narrative or, the details depict a different story, right? But essentially, like I said, when you submit a waiver, whether it's for moral or medical, it's requesting permission to bring you in. And it's an endless list, so I can't go through everything, but moral waivers are pretty common when it comes to, now with marijuana becoming legal in a lot of states. I think it's over 10 or 12 states across the country that have now legalized it. And just because it's legal in your state, it's not legal within the military. So we will be drug testing you, whether it's legal in your state or not. And if you fail it, chances are you're not getting back in. And based on the needs at that time or whatever, sometimes we can submit a MEPS DAT positive, drug and alcohol test positive for marijuana. Sometimes we can do a waiver after 60 days and you test negative on the following test. But sometimes that's not authorized. Not all components or not all branches of the service allow that type of waiver either. So be honest with your recruiter, and we'll do what we need to do to process you as long as you're otherwise qualified to join.
Okay. Now, moving into the medical waivers, how do you guys treat asthma? Like, what's the whole SOP about somebody having asthma? Is that allowed or is it not allowed?
So it is allowed, providing that it was a childhood asthma that you outgrew and have not had any asthma related incidences, breathing issues relating to asthma since age 13 forward to current date. So if you haven't been prescribed a pump or an inhaler, you haven't been to the hospital, seen a doctor, or expressed any signs or symptoms of asthma-related incidences since age 13, then it will get waived, providing that you can get because they will test you at MEPS, a negative pulmonary functions test, or PFT for short. So as long as you test negative and your doctor can support your statement that you have not had any asthma-related instances and that you've outgrown it since age 13, you're good to go. That waiver will get approved.
Okay.
Otherwise, no.
Okay. Now, say somebody, goes to MEPS, they fail something medically. What happens after that? What's the whole process for getting a waiver? Do they have to go to a doctor or?
Yeah, so we'll pretty much know as a recruiter, depending on your medical history or what you disclose to us, whether or not you're going to pass MEPS. If like, for example, a common thing is someone who wears glasses like myself, who I'm wearing contacts right now. So if I blink a lot, it's because my contacts are drying out. But
Same.
Astigmatism, right, is something that will get you disqualified pending a medical consultation with a contracted doctor within that field. So, for example, if you pass the medical or the vision exam, but they realize that you have an astigmatism, 9 out of 10 times they'll temporarily disqualify you pending a medical consult with a contracted medical staff that will evaluate you on whatever test that they can run, and then they'll send those notes back to MEPS, and then you can go back and enlist. So from A to Z, it'll look like this. You'll go for medical, you'll get temporarily disqualified, wait to do the medical consult, conduct the medical consult on a separate day. Once that's done, then we have to wait for the chief medical officer, or the CMO for short, to review the records. If they feel that you've had a pre-existing medical condition, then the burden of proof and evidence of medical documentation is on the applicant. MEPS has no idea about your medical history unless they identify something during the medical exam or you personally disclose it. Regardless of you signing a HIPAA form to release your medical records, they need a target or a bullseye to go, look, there are too many doctors, clinics, facilities, agencies, insurance companies, and due to HIPAA, as you know, working as a dental assistant, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's personal information. So if you disclose it or they identify something during the medical exam, the burden of proof is on the applicant. So you will be prompted to get those records and take it from there.
Okay.
And then what happens is the chief medical officer at that point will say they're good to go for enlistment, no waiver needed. Or they'll say you're not qualified for enlistment, period, no waiver is authorized. Or they could say they are temporarily or permanently disqualified, but they recommend a waiver, providing that the component of the Army or branch of the military approve medical waiver. So as long as you're trying to join approves a medical waiver, that will override the CMO's opinion, and you are able to enlist.
Okay. Now, another thing is that I myself was even concerned about, what if somebody has allergies and they're trying to join the service?
What type of allergies? If it's seasonal allergies, no problems.
For an example, say whether it be, allergic to bee stings or like a specific type of medication like penicillin or something like that, are they still eligible for enlistment?
So for penicillin specifically, it is for the most part okay. The question and concern that the CMO is going to have for you when you disclose that you are allergic to penicillin, because we do have an alternative. However, if you were to receive the penicillin shot, they ask you if you have any adverse reactions. If the answer is yes, you get hives or anything worse, then you're going to get disqualified for service. So just keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you know anything about whether or not being allergic to peanuts affects their service or not?
Permanently disqualified.
Really?
So let me tell you this. because sometimes applicants, when we as recruiters ask them questions about their medical history in the past, like even with asthma, right? Their mom or dad or a family member told them that they've had asthma, but they don't ever remember ever using a pump or an inhaler or seeing a doctor for asthma. And we ask them as a recruiter, have you ever actually taken and failed a pulmonary functions test? And when was the last time that you did, right? And were you actually diagnosed from a doctor? So when it comes to passing MEPS, if you are disclosing something that is hearsay because mom and dad said that they think, or you as the applicant are self-diagnosing without an actual real medical doctor evaluating you and running tests, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, I recently developed, and I'm assuming that I might be allergic to like genuine cherries with the pits, like the fake, they're real cherries, but like the cheap ones in a jar, like the red, super red ones, you know what I mean? Like those ones I can eat fine all day, but for some reason when I get those like organic, like in my mind, like I call real cherries with the pits, it makes my throat itchy, right? But in the eyes of the military, I don't have an allergy because I have to get diagnosed and get tested for the allergy, right? So if you're just self-diagnosing, you're going to disqualify yourself from service. Certain things like seafood allergies, 99 out of 100 times, no waiver authorized. Peanut allergies, 99% of the time, not authorized, won't get approved. So have an honest and frank conversation with your recruiter, and they will let you know what you need to list down and get documents for.
Okay. Now, you know, say somebody gets a waiver and that waiver gets rejected. Is there any other way that they could get into the service?
The only way that you can appeal a disapproved waiver is to have new evidence or new documentation. So for example, let's say you came from Africa, right? And you had a hernia surgery, something that is super routine under normal circumstances, no waivers needed, right? But it happened in another country, and let's say it happened when you were 6 years old. We all know certain countries, their record keeping is atrocious, right? So a lot of times our applicants will go down to MEPS and they'll see the scar and they'll question it and be like, oh yeah, when I was 6 years old, I had a hernia, right? The CMO is always going, like, you give an inch, the MEPS medical staff is going to take a mile, right? They're going to think worst case scenario. I'll give you another example of that, but they're going to see the scar and they're going to go, well, we need medical documentation. Well, there is no medical documentation because it happened in the country when you were 6 years old. Now, provided you were honest, and that is the case, what I recommend is you go to your regular primary care physician, get evaluated by them, and have them write a letter, right? Because let's say you went through MEPS and that was your story, but you had no medical documents, right? The MEPS CMO is going to be like, need medical documentation, permanently disqualified. Then it's on you to go get new medical documentation, something that's updated, right? So although you are no longer in Africa, if possible, you would reach out to your the other country and get a letter from them stating that there are no medical records found. If you can, great. If not, then an applicant statement from the applicant and the parent, like mom or dad, can write a notarized letter stating that when Johnny Snotnose was 6 years old, went in for hernia, got a quick surgery, and that was it, right? No complications. Your primary care physician here locally can also evaluate you and maybe, I guess, concur with your story, right? And based on their limited evaluation that they can do, they'll justify in a letter that based on the applicant statement and whatever evaluations that they run, that they feel that, yes, it appears that there was a, what were we talking about? What was it called again? A hernia. So
yeah.
Yes, that in fact, a hernia was hernia surgery was conducted. There does not seem to appear to have any limitations or restrictions at this time. And then you add that new letter, and then you can submit that to appeal the waiver that was denied, if that makes sense.
I got you. Okay. Now let's say because as you said, the MEPS really doesn't have a target when they're looking through your records. So let's say an applicant just completely lies, doesn't disclose any of the medical conditions that they have that disqualify them from service. What happens if they get caught lying at MEPS?
If the MEPS medical doctor, the CMO or chief medical officer feels that you're lying, they could technically just be like, we want all your medical records. We want to see your entire medical jacket. If you can produce it and there's nothing disqualifying, you're good to go. If you can't produce it, then they can play FF games with you and not enlist you. Mm-hmm. Now, if you blatantly lie and you don't get caught during the medical, live or die by that lie, because if they find out in the future that you lied, then that is considered either a fraudulent or erroneous entry issue, and they'll discharge you as a result.
Mm. And have you experienced a case like that before?
Where they didn't disclose it in the past and they wanted to disclose it now, or they did? Yeah. And they did not enlist again. So okay. I recently had somebody reach out to me on Instagram stating that their recruiter told them to lie about something that ultimately they could have gotten a waiver for and approved easily, which was, in this case, asthma. And he felt guilty about it, and he wanted to be honest and forthright. And he ultimately told the new recruiter, because he's been out of service for a while and he's looking to join. They ultimately denied his waiver, and they turned his honorable discharge in the past now to a general under honorable conditions. So if he had been qualified for the post 9/11 GI Bill or other incentives through the VA Veterans Affairs Office, he's no longer eligible to use those benefits.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Jeez. Wow.
Well, that's why it's important to do things the right way.
Yeah. Sheesh. Well, that pretty much sums up everything that I have for waivers. If you guys have any questions, put them down in the comments below. Team SWARTZ on YouTube, everybody. Sergeant First Class SWARTZ. He's also a recruiter and a drill sergeant. And so thank you so much for your time, Team SWARTZ.
And that's pretty much how waivers work in the whole enlistment process. I hope I cleared up a lot of things for you guys, and I hope you guys learned a lot from this video. If you guys are new to the channel and you like my content, I highly recommend that you guys subscribe. I'm not forcing or begging you guys to, but subscribe if you like my content to keep in touch. Follow me on Instagram too. Also, like the video if you haven't already. All that good stuff, comment, whatever you want to do, help the channel out. And thanks guys for watching. Peace out.